It is common knowledge amongst production companies that a film or show is written 3 times. The first is the script, the theoretical framework of the project. The second is during filming, with input from actors and technical limitations. The third is during editing, the most tedious and painstaking process of the project and the part where everything comes together. RWBY's editor has gone on record saying,
"Editing, for the most part, is kind of throwing a lot at the wall and seeing what sticks."
This is really freaking stupid. It is counterproductive to think this way, and the exact opposite of what a good editor should do. A good editor takes all the footage and takes a chainsaw to it. Then, once that's done, he takes a scalpel to it, carving hours of takes, pre-renders and clips, and forming something cohesive out of it. The editors are also the last people to get something in a production pipeline, so if something comes their way, rife with animation errors, it's usually too late. RWBY has a history of last-minute changes that screw with the editors. Let's just name a few. In Volume 3, Episode 3, Crow was originally going to use his scythe. This is why later in that episode, Mercury comments that he knew it was Crow because of his scythe. This, despite not seeing the scythe in this episode, or in their previous encounter, which was also changed last minute. The lines were recorded before any of the animation was finalized, and even if the editors caught this continuity error, it was far too late to have Yuri Lowenthal re-record his lines to say sword instead of scythe. In Volume 5, RWBY shoots Lionheart with her rifle. In the original release, Lionheart staggers and then runs off. In subsequent releases, they added in the aura shattering effect. This creates a lapse in logic for the original release, which is the one most people would watch. Had the editors known about this change, they could have bumped up the sound to show how much the rifle shot hurt, without needing the visual effect. And let's talk about that effect for a moment. The effect didn't exist until Volume 3, it's only shown 3 times in that volume. The first is when Yang breaks Mercury's aura, the second is in the flashback when Amber gets caught in the explosion, and the last is when Pyrrha's aura breaks. Then in Volume 4, they changed it to where every big hit is accompanied by that effect. Then they go around and say that the difference is an audio cue, but the sound editing is either so horrid or non-existent that you can't tell. Which to me seems like a case of the editors not knowing when the audio cue should be used. Here's a brief montage to show several of these aura breaks, some with a cue and others without. A good editor also controls the flow of information. The editor and the writer work hand in hand to tell the audience what they need to know when they need to know it, in the most effective way possible. Not having good communication between the writer and editor leads to redundant exposition, continuity errors, transitions with no narrative flow, and cuts that exist for no reason other than having a cut there. A common editing problem, especially in Volume 3, is the glut of reaction shots. For a tightly constructed action scene, actions and reactions flow together seamlessly. The quicker the action, the more important it is to hold the camera to capture every moment. Because having moments like this kills the pacing, artificially extends the episode, making it harder on the animators, and makes Coco look like a moron for not doing anything about the attack she's reacting to. Reaction shots like this should have never made it past the script, and at worst, should have been left on the cutting room floor. Now, let's show how much more effective certain scenes would be if the editor didn't insist on keeping everything in. It's funny how lost the art of editing has become in a day and age where millions of people online do some form of editing. Piss poor editing is what killed movies like The Last Jedi, and it kills scenes in RWBY that would otherwise have been fairly effective scenes. I think the real problem is the editor's unwillingness to go against the script. Because if I was an editor on the show, things like Team Coffee would have been left on the cutting room floor. Harsh as it may be, a lot of RWBY's problems, at least early on, stem from the crew not caring about making something cohesive or engaging. They wanted fluffy, mindless action scenes, and when it comes down to it, I'd rather watch Alan Becker's stick figure fights than Dead Fantasy or early RWBY. But as the show progressed and matured, it didn't really grow out of that gratuitous mindset. I really like Volume 6, but it should have been 12 episodes at most, with the majority of the Cordovan fight thrown out the window, and while we're cutting things from Volume 6, half the Argus stuff was also redundant and unnecessary. My hopes are still high for the overall content of RWBY going forward, even though the producer's getting axed is likely to have a massive effect on Volume 7's production. But I do think without a better editing team, the best we can hope for is to maintain the quality of volumes 4 and 6. Because the editing mentality we've gotten is always going to make the script worse than it already is. I'm Mediocrity4, there's just one more RWBY Honest Look I got planned for this offseason. Until then, thanks for watching.